Hello everyone, I am Jason Alcott, author of The Sewing Principle. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel if you've been here before. Thanks for joining. Do you ever feel like you're stuck? Maybe you're stuck in a point of decision where you're trying to decide, what the next step should be, or you're trying to decide, what direction God wants you to move in your life. I definitely remember many points in life where I felt like I'm at a crossroads. Do I pursue this or do I pursue this? Or maybe you feel stuck because you feel like it's a bit like Groundhog Day. There's a bit of a rut. It's kind of like, well, this day just sort of keeps repeating itself. I feel like I'm a little bit stuck and I'm not sure if I'm moving in the direction that God wants me to be moving, if I'm actually making the impact that I believe God wants me to be making. So what do we do in both of these situations? Is there an opportunity or is there a way for us to get unstuck? And today I want to propose a potential solution. So earlier this week, I watched a video called How Flow State Can Heal Trauma by a gentleman by the name of Stephen Coulter. Really interesting video, and there's a couple things that really stood out to me and got me thinking about what does flow state look like, and could this be something that you could potentially use to get you out of a rut? But before we unpack that a little bit more and dive into that, I need to tell you that I went whitewater rafting this last weekend. Have you ever been whitewater rafting before? I'd never been. This was my first time. I was invited out. My sister-in-law is getting married to my future brother-in-law, so I was invited out with the guys. It was really interesting because, we absolutely had a blast, but as we're preparing for the trip and getting ready to go out there that day, spring and summer in the Vancouver area where I live has decided that it just didn't feel like showing up yet. So it was a very cold, very wet, sort of rainy morning. This sort of combination of being cold and wet and outside early morning, it wasn't really lining up for me as like a great experience. Great group of guys. We were having fun and lots of laughs, but I'm kind of going, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? But something amazing happened as we hit the river. All of a sudden, I was in this moment where I had to be fully present because you got to be paying attention because I don't really know what I'm doing. And it was beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous. The mountains surrounding us, there was eagles. It was a beautiful day. Even though it was wet and raining, it was just absolutely gorgeous out there. And everything's just sort of faded away. The lack of sleep or the stress of work or everything that's going on in life, the ups and downs of life that we've talked about in these videos, life happens. All of a sudden we're on the river and it all just sort of fades away, and I'm present in this moment of like, oh dear Lord, please don't fall out of the boat and don't die. I've got 3 little girls. I got to get home safe, right? And we had this amazing time and an amazing experience. And I look back on it and I'm learning about flow, and all of a sudden it kind of clicks for me as I learn about this from this video with Stephen Coulter. What he talks about is like, I was in a state of flow. I was in a flow state as we went down that river, as we lost track of time. I have no concept of how long we were out there for. It was a couple hours apparently, but I had no idea. I really didn't know. And we just had that moment where I realized, oh my gosh, I was actually in a flow state in this experience. So this brings me back to this video by Stephen Coulter where he says that one day in the future, he wouldn't be surprised if doctors or psychiatrists actually prescribed people to go and have an experience. Specifically, he was talking about people that were suffering from maybe PTSD or had trauma in their lives. Now, I recognize those are very serious and significant things. You're dealing with a very significant memory, something that's very strong. But he says what a flow state does is it helps to override or overpower, push out that sort of trauma or PTSD experience by replacing it with something else. And that can be best done by going into a state of flow. And he talks about a state of flow and being in those moments where it's this perfect balance between your challenge, what's challenging you, like a whitewater rafting river, and your skill set. And you want something that's just slightly more challenging than your skill set. So I'd never been on the river before, so it was definitely more challenging. I'd never done it before and I wanted to survive the experience. So it was definitely outside my skill set. So I had that opportunity to go down the river and it pushed me and it challenged me. It required me to be fully present. And he says when you go through an experience like that, when you're in a flow state, you create a really strong memory, which I do. I vividly remember the water coming over the bow of that boat and hitting me in the face. This sort of wake up experience. I remember that. It's very clear. And so I'm listening to this video and I kind of watched it a couple times and I'm going, I think there's something here. And I'm kind of going, hold on a second. If you can prescribe this for somebody that's walking through trauma or potentially, other experiences in their life, could you not prescribe an experience for someone that's feeling stuck, so that you could shift your mental state? So I have to say, as I'm learning about flow, I recognize how much I don't know. Just like everything else, right? I learn a little bit and I'm like, wow, I don't really know a whole lot about that. I experience what I believe is flow, like I kind of lose track of time. I'm really dialed in when I'm working on the creation for these videos, when I'm like researching and reading and kind of coming into that space. And I'm working sort of into what I believe are strengths that I'm developing or skill sets that I'm developing. I think maybe in the fringes of my mind, I knew that there were other areas of experiencing flow, but I recognize now I can experience flow in lots of different areas. This idea of being able to be fully present in a moment where you lose track of time, maybe where it's pushing you or challenging you or causing you to be uncomfortable. You know, when I come away from a session of like researching and preparing for these videos, I often feel energized, right? And when I came away from whitewater rafting, physically I was tired, but I felt mentally very energized. I felt uplifted and encouraged, and all of a sudden it shifted my mental state. So what I'm proposing is that when you're feeling stuck, find a way to get into flow. So what could that potentially look like for you? I mean, it might be getting outside for a hike. Stephen in his video talks about, he's like, whenever I have a friend that's going through a breakup, he always encourages them to go skydiving, because skydiving is an experience that often puts people into a state of flow, because it's this, you know, this challenge skill set, this sort of balance, right? Like you've never really maybe experienced that before. It's definitely going to challenge you and you're going to be fully present, that state of flow, right? But maybe it doesn't need to be as extreme. Maybe it's just as getting out on a bit of a hike that's going to push your physical limits, or maybe you need to try rock climbing for the first time at an indoor climbing gym. Something that is going to push you, challenge you. It's going to make you a little bit uncomfortable, but not so uncomfortable it's going to tip you over the edge, but just something that's just beyond your reach of your skill set. That's the sort of experience that you're looking for, that I believe can give you that perspective and shift you out of the rut or the stuck moment that you might be feeling. Peter Reek, who is a friend of mine and a great thought leader here in the Vancouver area, he recently released an article on LinkedIn. We can include a link in the show notes, but he just talked about the benefits of being out in nature. He was talking about flow in the article as well, but just in being out in nature. And what I loved about the article is that he talked about this idea of how when we're out in nature, we gain perspective into recognizing that we're all a part of something that is so much bigger than just us. And when you can get outside and you see the surrounding landscape, when you see the stars, you start to get an understanding that it's not all about you and we're part of something that's much bigger than us. But I love the idea that when we're out in nature, and I felt this on the river, you're kind of looking up at the mountains, there's snow, you get a little bit humbled in that, you know, it's not all about me. I'm a part of something that's so much bigger. Because when we're feeling stuck, or when you're feeling stuck, often you're inwardly focused, right? You're focused on, well, I need to make this decision, or I need to get out of this rut. When I need to actually be able to step out and see how my life fits into God's bigger picture. Get out into nature where you can see things from a different perspective, where you can recognize the beauty of God's creation and recognize your role in God's bigger story. So when you're feeling stuck, whether that's now or in the future, remember, take the prescription, get into a flow state, find something that pushes you, find something that gets you into a challenge that's going to push your limits and abilities. Get on a hike, go whitewater rafting, get outside. We're going to find different points in life where we're going to feel stuck. It's going to happen. It happens to all of us, where we're going to feel like we're in that moment of, I'm not really sure what to do next. And changing your situation, getting yourself up and moving, and being able to change your mental state can be a huge opportunity for you to move forward. So get comfortable with the idea of challenging yourself, putting yourself into new situations where you can learn something new. So I know that God wants to do incredible things in and through you. He already is, and I'm excited for what he's doing in and through you. So thank you so much for the feedback you've been giving for these videos. I hope that you have an absolutely awesome rest of your day, and I look forward to sharing with you again next week.